I'm kicking off by explaining the overall context. What is the Ministry of Justice for? Well, that's what it's for. It brings together civil justice and criminal justice. Okay? So it brings together courts, prisons, probation, and legal aid. What do we do if people need help because they're in debt, they've got a problem with a family problem, there's a criminal offence, anything to do with the civil or criminal justice system, that's us. And those are our key strategic objectives. And why are we interested in innovation and transformation? For the reasons set out on the slide. Firstly, the Ministry of Justice is a new department. It's only come together a couple of years ago and creates an opportunity that people have argued for 100 years would be a good thing to have. One department responsible for that justice system from beginning to end, managing that process as one rather than in little bits. And secondly, if we don't use the opportunity created by the bringing together of the Ministry of Justice, we're going to be really stuck. Because over the last few years, the resources we've had at our disposal have been going up year after year. But now they're going to come down significantly, as I guess is true for all of you. And the demands on our system are already rising. As a recession begins, you find people have greater civil problems than they used to have. You generally find that crime goes up. So we're getting increasing demands on our system. The resources are going down. And if we carry on as we are, then we'll have more prison overcrowding, we'd have more delays in courts, we'd have a worse service. But we think that by working in different ways, by using the opportunity presented by the fact that there is now one ministry responsible for fixing that problem, and the fact that we have an imperative to change, we just can't go on as we are, using money in the way that we are. We think that we can achieve better justice more cheaply. And we've got two key components to that story, which you're going to hear a bit more from my colleagues about in a moment. Firstly, on the demand side. So just as in the NHS, you can improve things by hospitals can get more efficient, but the real transformation is by people being ill less often, and changing their behaviours to be well more often. Similarly, what can we do to make people less likely to enter the criminal justice system or the civil justice system in the first place? Or if they have got a problem, do they really need to go to court every time? So what can we do to bring demand down? And secondly, when people are in that system, instead of treating them as a parcel to be passed from the CPS to the police, to the court, to probation, for example, what if we treated them as a customer, where the job of the different parts of the system, and this is the point of the Ministry of Justice, was to treat them as a user of that system much more efficiently in a streamlined way? What would it look like if firstly we stopped so many people coming in, people who didn't need to be in the court system in the first place, and secondly for those who did, that we treated them as if they were customers? They're not literally customers, but what would it mean for our system if we treat them as if they were? And to do those two things, we need to do two other things too. We need to strip out any waste that we've got in our back office functions, and we need to make sure that our frontline staff have got the capability, the development opportunities to support that sort of transformation. So that's more than enough of the theory from me. We've been putting some of this stuff into practice already, and my colleagues are going to tell you a bit more about that now. Firstly, from Laura on the civil side.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Wensley, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing about transforming services in the civil justice system. So, we estimate at the moment that about a third of people have experienced some kind of civil justice problem or rights issue in the past 3 years. That might be trouble paying your credit card bills, it might be arranging contact arrangements for a child with an ex-partner, it may be pursuing a compensation claim with a company for faulty goods or services. The Ministry of Justice tries to provide services to help people resolve those disputes through the justice system. This might be through the civil courts or through a tribunal service appeal, or by providing free legal advice to people who can't afford to pay for it themselves. However, despite our best efforts, research shows that 20% of people are still unable to get help, and 40% of those problems are still going unresolved. Now, that might be because somebody hasn't sought help in the first place. It might be because they haven't got the right help when they did try, or that they've given up partway through the process because it's too complex or time-consuming to continue. So our biggest challenge here is getting the right kind of help to more people, but as Jonathan mentioned, in a time of constricted finances. So how can we do more of this, but for less money? So this is how we're proposing to do it. What we're saying is we want to make it easier to access those services in the first place and to make sure we resolve those disputes sooner once somebody's in the system. Firstly, we're going to make information more accessible, more user-friendly through online services, telephone. And then once someone is in the system, we want to try and provide a kind of triage function that makes sure we guide them through to save them having to navigate what is quite a complex system on their own. And those services that they find will be focused on early advice and resolution, so making sure those problems are solved at the earliest point possible. A good example of that is through mediation services, which Jeremy will talk about a bit later. But really the focus there is making sure people don't have to end up in a formal hearing in court or tribunal. And that will ensure that those formal hearings requiring a judicial decision are reserved for the most serious and complex cases, and for others that don't need it, they won't have to go through that process. So the aim is that that will deliver two things. Firstly, improved user experience. As people find services easier to use, they can find what they need much quicker, and that the focus really is on early resolution, so to reduce the time that it takes to get that result. But also to reduce our own operating costs, thinking about efficiency, again with the focus on early resolution, getting those results quicker, but also making sure our own processes are much more lean, much more efficient, not only to reduce our own costs, but also for the user, so they don't find that they're in a lengthy process. So that's the theory, that's how we're trying to work, that's how we're trying to improve our services. I'm going to pass over to John, who's going to show you how that's working in practice.
Thanks, Laura. Good afternoon, all. I work for the Legal Services Commission, a non-departmental government body sponsored by the Ministry of Justice. I'd like to talk to you about our telephone service, a very brief snapshot of a fairly innovative service, I think, which provides legal advice in a number of areas. Examples are debt, employment, which can include unfair dismissal, education issues, special educational needs disputes with local authorities, stopping people being repossessed, benefits tax credits, domestic abuse and divorce, all work that we can deal with by telephone. The telephone service number is the 0845 number at the top. None of this is provided in-house, all contracted out to a total of 16 different organisations. Telephone calls come into the 0845 number. We have non-legally qualified but trained, skilled people acting as our operator service. They perform a number of functions. They'll either transfer the call to other non-legal services funded helplines, such as Consumer Direct, such as Consumer Credit Counselling Service, which clearly, if it's appropriate, saves the public purse money, that we're not double paying for advice. We will, if need be, transfer the work to a face-to-face organisation in the high street that has a contract with us. A lot of calls that we get, we can help clients with information resources, leaflets, referrals to websites, self-help management packs. About half the calls we get, we can close at this point just with the provision of general advice. If people need specialist advice in those areas that I was describing, we need to put them through a financial assessment to make sure they're financially eligible for legal aid. Then we can connect them seamlessly and the records we've gathered so far to 14 organisations around the country. A number of just sort of snapshots in the time available that you may be interested in. As I said, we close about half of the cases at our operator service without ever speaking to a specialist legal advisor. Roughly about a third of cases we transfer to our telephone specialists, and roughly 15% we send to our face-to-face organisations. Doing work by telephone opens up new channels, and for us it means we can roughly help twice the number of clients for the same amount of money than if we refer them to high street organisations. We're open considerably longer than high street organisations. We open at 9 in the morning, we close at 8 p.m. at night. We're open Saturday mornings from 9 till 1, and if demand needs it, we'll extend those hours. We answer over 95% of calls that we get. The industry average in the advice sector is somewhere around about 60-70%. 95% of our clients, it's never dipped our client satisfaction below 95% would recommend the service. We can offer three-way translation in 140 different languages for people who do not have English as their first language. We also offer email advice, British Sign Language advice by webcam for deaf clients who clearly are not traditionally best served by telephone. We offer a text service which is aimed primarily at younger clients but available to all. If you text legal aid to 810, we will call you back. We have a website. You can book a call at a specific time slot of the day that we will call you, and we will call you in a language other than English if that's your preference as well. Our clients, 20% of our clients classify themselves as having a disability, 24% of our clients classify themselves as being from a black and minority ethnic background. Our call volumes are rising. Currently we're answering around about 50,000 new calls a month. Thank you. Pass over to Jeremy.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Jeremy Tagg. I'm in the Civil Law and Justice Division. I just want to tell you a little bit about our small claims mediation service that we set up and began to roll out in 2007. So it's just been going a couple of years. A bit first about small claims. What are small claims? That's right. These are claims below £5,000. I mean, these are general kind of consumer disputes. Hopefully you never have one and never have to come to court. But these are cases which might involve kind of goods and services, landlord and tenant disputes, disputes with your builder, problems with car repairs, any number of things. I mean, I recently heard of a case of someone who took a claim to court over a £30 water filter. So some things can be very, very minor that end up in the small claims court that probably don't need to be there and don't need to be seen by a judge. The thing about small claims is they're often unrepresented, so people don't go into these cases with a solicitor, no one to advise them, no one to really help them settle with the other side. And they end up kind of getting sucked into the whole small claims process because they appear to run out of alternatives. So almost no legal costs at all, and a very small one-off court fee to issue a claim in the county courts. And because there's no solicitor involved, the majority of these cases go to a hearing before a judge. And in fact, if you look at court statistics, you find that almost 2/3 of all hearings in the county courts are small claims hearings. But really we're doing this for the parties, because even though the judge sees you in, as it were, their chambers and it's more informal than a main court, it's quite a stressful experience. Now, as far as mediation service works, I don't know if you know what mediation is, but the mediator is just a third party, really. They help you to resolve the dispute. They don't give their own ideas, but they help facilitate, as it were, a discussion between the two parties. And how it works is the parties receive an invitation. These are parties already issued a claim. It's already been defended by the other side. And it's a free service from that point on. They're offered an invitation to use the service. They don't have to. It's voluntary. And if both sides decide they want to use it, they will phone the mediator. And the mediator will arrange a mutually agreeable time and date with them. So again, that's different from a hearing, because a court will simply tell you this is the hearing date, you turn up on this date. So they arrange a time that's suitable for the parties. And almost 10,000 mediations have now been conducted in the last year. And this is actually with a group of 23 mediators. So not many mediators conducting 10,000 mediations. And for your interest in talking in old money, they are senior executive officers. They're band Bs with us, but they're different with every other grade in the civil service. So they're a third of the cost of a district judge. So it's cheaper for the courts to offer this service, but it's also much better for the parties because they don't need to come to court. Because over 90% of these cases are settled by telephone. The parties phone one side, they phone the other side. If necessary, they can get them together on a conference call. And it's had very, very high rates of customer satisfaction, higher than anything else that we've been offering in the courts to date. 98% satisfaction. They're either satisfied or very satisfied. with the professionalism and helpfulness of the mediators, and 95% say that they would use the service again. Just a few bits of feedback here. Those results were based on over 5,000 people that have responded to our online service. We've had 2,000 or 3,000 positive comments. Those are just a few, and I'm not going to read through them. Just really to tell you that it is a flexible service. One of our mediators was phoning someone, and they could hear cows mooing in the background, and they asked where they were, and this was a dispute with a farmer, and they were sat on their tractor in a field doing the mediation. So as I say, it's very, very flexible, and it's also now award-winning. We won an award. This is what's called the Crystal Scales of Justice Award, which is one award in the field of civil justice in the whole of Europe. So it's actually now got quite a lot of other member states interested in doing something similar. I'll pass you on to Carol and Simon. Thank you.
Afternoon, everybody. Just for the sake of clarity, I'm Carol Edmonds. This is, wherever he is, this is Simon Benioff. We're going to just spend a few minutes of your time talking through one of the things that we've been involved with for the past few weeks, looking at the Sussex criminal justice system. So talking about a project that we've been involved with from the end of May, really, and which concludes at the end of July. So it's not one of these long, drawn-out projects that sometimes go on. This has been very short and sharp, so we're just going to tell you a little bit about it. So as Jonathan said, it's really been about working across the system. So it's been about bringing together key players in the Sussex local criminal justice system, the Sussex Police, Her Majesty's Court Service, which is the organisation I work for, CPS, the local Criminal Justice Board, and it's been facilitated by the Cabinet Office under their capability building programme. So it's very much working across organisational boundaries, trying to break down some of the barriers in terms of organisational boundaries, and doing that thing that, if you've been a civil servant like me for many years, we've been trying to do for a lot of time, which is joining up government. And it's been using a cross-public sector team. So it's not been using external people from outside the public sector. It's actually been bringing together a group of people from a variety of departments and using their skills and expertise. So a variety of backgrounds, people from the local area in terms of Sussex, people from, like myself, who works for the regional office, Simon works for the national lean programme in terms of HMCS, but also Treasury, National Audit Office, Department for Work and Pensions. A whole range of people have been brought together. And as I say, we got together at the end of May, so you can imagine 16 of us brought together in a room, more or less complete strangers, so brought together as a team, and the next day we were in the police cells. Not because we'd done anything wrong, but because we were actually being walked through what happens in the Sussex criminal justice system. So actually going into the police cells, going into the admin section of the police and the CPS, going into court. And you'd think working for HMCS that wouldn't be a novel experience for me, but you can imagine we don't get to actually go into court very often and see what's actually happening. So that was insightful in itself. So what we've been looking to do, it's a pilot that supports the criminal justice system work together to improve performance, become more cost effective, and provide the best chance of justice to all customers of the system. And as Jonathan said, using the word customers is slightly odd in our circumstances sometimes. But when we say all customers, we mean from the suspect to the victim to the witness, to counsel, etc., to the internal customers and colleagues. So pilot to be delivered by a cross-public sector team, bringing in expertise. As I've said, we've had huge amounts of expertise for people who work in communications, who work in finance, who work in treasury, so really a broad understanding. It's just been a kind of fabulous experience in terms of learning from other people and capturing that learning for the wider benefit of people throughout the civil service. And as I said, it's been facilitated by the Cabinet Officer's Capability Building Programme. So what we've been trying to look at is continuous improvement. A couple of quotes there, which might ring true. Gentlemen, we've run out of money, therefore we will have to think. As Jonathan said, we can no longer afford to keep ploughing money into the system. We have to think differently. and insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So what we've been trying to do is using continuous improvement techniques. I'm sure many of you in your departments will be using continuous improvement techniques. Some people are using Lean. We are using Lean in the HMCS. So it's how can we apply continuous improvement techniques across a system, not just within a particular agency or organisation. A few principles of lean thinking about specifying what creates value for the customer perspective, identifying all the steps across the value stream, making work flow through the system, pull, ensuring that that the service is pulled by customer demand, and perfection, striving for perfection. And this is very much, in terms of at the heart of using continuous improvement techniques, is very much about involving staff and frontline people, people who know the job, people who day in, day out understand the frustrations of the system and can see the waste in the systems, both in their time, their customers' times, very expensive time like those of lawyers and judges. So as I say, we've all been within our organisations trying to make improvements. This is about, can we take it to another level by working across the system? And it's certainly been found that using continuous improvement techniques makes changes more sustainable, because you're actually involving the people who, at the end of the day, when the project team is disbanded and everybody's gone their own way, will actually be still making it work. So what we've done so far, we've had 3 work streams. An analysis and engagement work stream that, as I say, worked with frontline staff to understand what happens in Sussex, what happens in a particular, we followed through a particular type of case. We followed through a common assault case, because that's a common type of case, and we've identified opportunities for improvement within each agency and across the system. We've had a customer insight team who've been looking at talking to customers and talking to people who represent customers in the system. And it is a very unusual term, that customers, when you're talking about victims, witnesses, but getting an insight about how the system feels for them. Because, of course, it doesn't matter to them that it's the police, the CPS, HMCS, whatever. For them, it's their experience. And obviously, it's often a very traumatic experience as well. So we're talking about, this is not about cool, objective logic. This is about the emotion of having been involved in a distressing incident, witnessing a distressing incident. And we've had a team looking at best practice, looking at other multi-agency organisations, how they've made things work across a system. So they've been looking at that and looking at the most successful examples for the criminal justice system.
One of the key elements that we've used in the project is something called value stream mapping, and this part of the picture there shows the first part of the value stream map for the police. So what's a value stream map? It's a technique for showing the big end-to-end of the process. So you pick up right from the beginning right to the end of the process. You can see what's going on in between, and it's very data rich and will capture a lot of the items that are down there. So opening times, cycle times, backlogs, quality issues. So you can capture all on a map. So it makes it much more data rich than a traditional sort of process map. And it also shows the value to the customer of each of the steps, because at the top you're linking it back up to the different parties within who have got an interest within the justice system, and it's so it shows the value, customer value, and it's an excellent starting point to starting the lean journey, because it avoids you tinkering, because you can see where the key backlogs or problems are in the process end to end. So rather than fixing one point, you go to the main area that you need to fix where the problems are. So we map the process through from the defendant's point of view, because he's the consistent in the process, but then layered on top of that the victim and witness type of values. So we captured those. The boxes capture all of the data that I say there's listed on the side, and then we added in the victim and witness journey. So there's lines going back and forwards where we connect with the victim and witness. So what did this show us? For just a few examples, this showed us in this process when we put it end to end, it showed that there's a real lack of contact with the victims and witness at the front end of the process with the police, which is something we're going to look to see if we can address. It shows that we've got lots of different databases amongst the three agencies, none of which actually talk to each other in any meaningful way. And on quality, particularly on the police one, the midway through the process, the statement quality, 50% of the statements were not right in some way, which meant that the defendant probably had to be released on bail. So the work would then loop back, because they'd have to get further evidence or do something to the statement, and then if the person didn't turn back up or when they're released on bail, the police would then have to go and rearrest them. So there's a huge rework loop because of the quality wasn't right at the first stage. So looking at these sort of maps, it causes you to consider some of like where the key elements are of value in the process and things that you're just doing that are just wasting time. And it raises key issues, like I was saying, like raising the quality statement is a key issue for Sussex to be able to improve their service. So we repeated this process for three times for the police, the CPS and the magistrates' courts, and we used, as we can see, a selection of the people down the side, but you can see it's people that actually do the job. It's not managers that are a higher level, it's people that do the job so they understand the real problems and the real issues so we can get to the root causes of the problems. And when we put all of the maps together and got the agencies together, it highlights some key problems, like if you had a blank piece of paper, there's no way that you would design the system to look anything in the way that it does. Why would you have three different admin units creating three different files using all the colours under the rainbow for the different types of file rather than having any sort of standard process? There's lots of duplication. There's no ownership of the process from beginning to end. We all are in our little silos, but there's no one sort of with an over end-to-end view. And the performance measures across the agencies aren't really joined up in any meaningful way. So the next stage really is to deal with these issues and come up with an ideal future state.
So what next? As I say, we started this on the 20th of May, and every Thursday we've been going down to Sussex to be involved in this project. Tomorrow, you'd think that doing Civil Service Live might be the highlight of your week, but actually we've got another big workshop tomorrow in Sussex, which is about designing that future state. So it's about working to see what we can do that in the short to medium term, because the things like all of us who've worked in government, who've been involved with, who know about IT projects, or even if you don't know about them, know that we haven't exactly got the greatest success rate in terms of implementing large IT projects. So thinking about what are the things we can do in the short to medium term, but also thinking about, if we were designing this system from scratch, how would we make it work? What would we actually do, bearing in mind what is of value to the customer? And we'll be taking a proposal to Sussex Local Criminal Justice Board for taking the work forward, and that proposal goes to them on the 23rd of July. And then we have a meeting with the cross-government continuous improvement steering group who commissioned this project. And there's a few extra words on the slide, which leads me nicely into, and I think what next is a summer holiday, because we're all a bit, it's been great, but it's been quite intense, and so we're looking forward to that too.
So, I hope that's given you a bit of a sense of what we're trying to do to transform justice. You can see that we've been on the journey for a while, and we've given you some examples of practical work that's been done already, and you can see what we're doing now across the criminal justice system. We have bold plans to go further. So just as we're starting to ask questions like, could we replace a court hearing with a farm on a tractor? We're asking questions like, well, why do some people need to go to any sort of court for criminal offences? If someone's arrested by the police today and admits it, couldn't we just beam them through to a magistrate to give them the sentence? Well, we're piloting that now. And while we're at it, what's the definition of illegal anyway? Why should it be a criminal offence, for example, not to have a TV licence? Should that be a criminal offence? Or might one simply stick a tariff on the cost of a TV? Once you start thinking about, in the way that Winston Churchill suggested, you might do things when resources are constrained, it's really interesting what you come up with. At least that's what we're finding, and I hope we've not taken up too much of your time.